And welcome to another week of Light to My Path, our 2025 Bible reading plan. This week is another fantastic week. We're reading an entire book of the New Testament this week, a very unique book, because it's one that's written by one person. He only wrote one book, and it's the letter of James. James is known as the half-brother of Jesus. James was the guy who was really kind of like the elder. He was kind of like in charge of the Jerusalem church, which was the first community of Christians in Jerusalem, especially after Peter and John kind of left and did their thing. James is kind of a big deal. He was Jesus' half-brother. He remembers Jesus when he was a kid, It's pretty awesome to have a letter of his work today. It's thought that the letter to James is probably a letter that was passed on to a bunch of different churches. It probably captures the heart of what James taught. And check out the Bible Project's video on the letter of James. I think it's really helpful, but it gives this insight that the two main sources of inspiration for this letter seem to be the Sermon on the Mount that his half-brother gave, that Jesus gave in Matthew 5-7, and the book of Proverbs, which makes sense because as a Jewish boy, you would have heard the Proverbs and been formed in the Proverbs, and when you're reading James, it will sound Sermon on the Mount-ish, and it will sound Proverbs-ish. It's basically an attempt to form a community, to form a church, to live a wise life, to live the wisdom that's defined not by the world, but actually that's defined by Jesus. That's defined particularly by his way of the Sermon on the Mount. James is a fascinating letter for a bunch of different reasons. One is it doesn't sound like the New Testament. It sounds like the Old Testament in many ways. It sounds like Proverbs in a lot of different ways. But it also is very, what's the word? It's very abrupt. It's very, like, you read it and you will be confronted immediately. Because even in chapter 1, after he gets to the greeting, he's like, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials, so when stuff doesn't go your way, when you're suffering, when people are against you, and it's like you're in a trial, here's what you do. You consider it pure joy. Consider it all joy. Because the testing of your faith produces endurance. And I don't know about you, but I tend not to face suffering, temptation, persecution, trials. I tend not to face it as pure joy. And so James immediately is challenging our perception of how we see the world around us. It's a call to a deep trust that even in this hard thing, it doesn't say God is the one that's doing it, right? Even in this difficult thing, even in this suffering, even in this trial that is hitting us and hurting us, we can consider it joy because we trust that God will bring something out of it that will transform us, that will shape us, that will make us something better for the future. That's just practically on the ground, it's a really difficult thing to believe. It's a difficult thing to actually embody and trust. Because when you're facing really hard stuff, considering it, like remembering, okay, God might not be doing this to me, but God is going to bring something good out of this and transform me, actually. That's hard to believe, though. But anyway, the other thing I love about James is he is real serious that faith must be put into action. That faith, you'll read this, what is it, chapter 2, I think? Faith without works, faith without action is dead. And so you can read Paul's letters and think all we need to do is believe and we'll be saved or whatever. And that's not what Paul means. Paul means more than that, because for Paul, belief is not just thinking something, but it's living a life according to it, right? But James is very serious that faith that's not accompanied by works, faith without works is not faith at all. Faith without works is dead. And so he's constantly throwing it into our faces, like we have to live out our faith. We have to act out our faith. And he says at the very end of chapter 1, he says, religion that is pure and undefiled before God is this: it's to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. And by that he means like the ways of the world. And so he's serious. Faith must be practiced. It's a very practical letter because he talks about the way we view other people, the way we love other people, how we're called to love without partiality. He talks about the danger of our tongue, not like our taste, but like what we say, what we speak, and how it is fraught with danger. Which that sounds a lot like Proverbs if you've read Proverbs. Anyway, James, it's so rich. There's so much to it. It will be a fun and interesting week of reading, but it will also be a challenging week of reading. And so I really want to invite you, open yourself up to the challenge of what James has to say to your life, to your faith in action, so to your actions, what it has to say to you. So, all right, check out the Bible Project video on James again. It's excellent. Have a great week of reading, and I'd love to hear from you. All right, take care.